The autumn rain fell steadily on the streets of Chicago, each drop catching the neon glow of the McDonald's sign that flickered intermittently in the gathering dusk. Peter Cetera pulled his coat tighter as he walked toward the familiar golden arches, seeking nothing more than a quick coffee and perhaps a moment of solitude before his next appointment. The year was 2019, and at 75, the legendary musician had learned to cherish these quiet moments between the demands of his still active career. The streets were slick with rain, reflecting the amber streetlights like scattered coins on dark pavement. Peter had always found something poetic about Chicago in the rain. The way the city seemed to slow down, the way people hurried past with their heads down, each lost in their own private worlds. He had written some of his most heartfelt songs on nights like this, when the weather seemed to match the melancholy that often inspired his music. As he approached the restaurant, something caught his eye near the large dumpster behind the building. A small figure was hunched over, carefully sorting through discarded food containers and paper bags. The figure moved with deliberate precision, not the frantic desperation one might expect, but with a methodical care that spoke of routine and necessity. The sight stopped Peter in his tracks, his hand frozen on the restaurant's door handle. The figure was a boy, perhaps 12 or 13 years old, wearing a threadbare jacket that had clearly seen better days. The jacket, once blue, had faded to a grayish color, and Peter could see patches where his mother had carefully mended tears with mismatched thread. His dark hair was damp from the rain, plastered against his head, and his small hands worked quickly but gently through the refuse, selecting items with the practiced eye of someone who had done this many times before. What struck Peter most profoundly was the boy's manner. He wasn't angry or desperate. He moved with dignity, carefully setting aside items he couldn't use, making sure not to scatter garbage across the parking lot. When he found something edible, he examined it carefully, as if making quality assessments that spoke to standards maintained even in desperate circumstances. The musician's heart clenched with recognition and pain. In all his years of fame and fortune, witnessing the struggles of everyday people had never lost its impact on him. He had grown up in humble circumstances himself in Chicago, the son of a machinist and a homemaker, understanding intimately what it meant to want for basic necessities. His father had worked long hours at the factory. His mother had stretched every dollar until it screamed, and there had been nights when dinner was whatever they could afford at the corner store. But seeing a child in such circumstances struck him particularly deeply. This wasn't abstract poverty or distant suffering. This was a young person, barely into his teens, forced to search for sustenance in the discarded refuse of others. Yet even in this moment of profound need, the boy maintained a dignity that spoke to something unbreakable in his spirit. Peter quietly approached, his footsteps muffled by the rain and the distant hum of evening traffic. The boy was so focused on his task that he didn't notice the approaching figure. As Peter drew closer, he could see the boy's face more clearly in the harsh light of the parking lot's security lamp. Despite his circumstances, there was something remarkable about the child's expression. His eyes held intelligence and determination rather than defeat. His movements were careful and respectful, even while searching through garbage. There was no self-pity in his posture, no anger at his situation, only a quiet resolve to do what needed to be done. Peter noticed other details that painted a picture of the boy's character. His shoes were old but clean, carefully maintained despite their worn condition. His jeans had been hemmed by hand, probably by a mother who wanted her son to look presentable even when they couldn't afford new clothes. Most telling of all, when the boy found a paper napkin that wasn't soiled, he used it to wipe his hands before continuing his search. "Excuse me, son," Peter said gently, his voice soft enough not to startle the boy, but clear enough to be heard over the rain. The child looked up quickly, fear flashing across his features like lightning. He took an immediate step back, clutching a partially eaten burger he had retrieved from the waste. His eyes darted left and right, as if calculating escape routes, but he didn't run. Instead, he stood his ground with the kind of quiet courage that comes from having faced difficult situations before. "I'm sorry, sir. I wasn't making a mess. I always clean up after myself," the boy said quickly, his voice carrying a slight tremor but also an unmistakable dignity. His English was clear and precise, with just a hint of an accent that suggested Spanish as his first language. I didn't take anything that wasn't already thrown away. Peter raised his hands peacefully, the universal gesture of non-threat. You're not in trouble, son. I was wondering if you might be hungry. I was about to get some dinner myself, and I hate eating alone. The boy studied Peter's face carefully, as if trying to determine his intentions. There was intelligence in that gaze, a wisdom that seemed far too mature for his years. He was clearly weighing risks and benefits, trying to decide whether this stranger represented opportunity or danger. I'm okay, sir. Thank you, though, the boy replied after a long moment, his voice gaining strength. My mother taught me to be grateful for kind offers, but also to be careful with strangers. Your mother sounds very wise, Peter said, crouching down to the boy's eye level to seem less intimidating. The movement caused his knees to protest, a reminder of his 75 years. But he ignored the discomfort. What's your name? Miguel, the boy answered after a moment's hesitation, as if he had decided that this particular stranger was worth trusting with at least that much information. Miguel, that's a strong name. It means, who is like God, doesn't it? Peter extended his hand with a warm smile. I'm Peter. Miguel looked surprised that this stranger knew the meaning of his name. After a brief pause, he shifted the burger to his left hand and shook Peter's offered hand with surprising firmness. His grip was that of someone accustomed to work, despite his young age. Are you here alone, Miguel? Peter asked gently. The boy's eyes darted away, and Peter could see the internal struggle between honesty and caution. Finally, Miguel answered, My mom is working. She works very late, and sometimes there isn't time to make dinner before she leaves for her second job. Peter felt his chest tighten. The casual way Miguel mentioned his mother's second job spoke to a reality that was all too common. Working parents forced to take multiple positions just to survive, often at the cost of time with their children. 2 jobs? Miguel nodded, his expression matter-of-fact rather than self-pitying. She cleans offices at night after she finishes at the laundromat during the day. She says we're saving money for a better place to live. She says if we work hard and stay focused, things will improve. The rain began to fall harder, and Peter noticed Miguel shivering despite his attempts to appear strong. Water was beginning to seep through the boy's worn jacket, and his lips were taking on a slightly blue tinge. The temperature was dropping as evening settled over the city. Miguel, would you mind if I bought you a proper dinner? Not because I feel sorry for you, but because I genuinely hate eating alone. And you'd actually be doing me a favor by keeping me company. Miguel looked uncertain, his mother's warnings about strangers clearly warring with the very real hunger that Peter could see in his eyes. My mom says not to take things from strangers. She says people sometimes expect things in return, even when they say they don't. Your mom is absolutely right to teach you that. Peter agreed emphatically. But what if we went inside where it's warm and dry, and you could call her to ask permission? I promise I'm not a stranger who means any harm. I'm just someone who believes everyone deserves a warm meal and a dry place to sit, especially on a night like this. Miguel considered this proposition carefully, his young face serious with the weight of decision. Peter could see him evaluating not just the immediate offer, but trying to assess Peter's character, his motivations, his trustworthiness. After what felt like a long moment, Miguel nodded slowly. I suppose I could call her and ask. She gets worried when she can't reach me, so she gave me this old phone for emergencies. He pulled out a battered flip phone that looked like it had been manufactured at least a decade earlier. They walked toward the McDonald's entrance together, and Peter was struck by how Miguel immediately straightened his shoulders and attempted to smooth his damp hair. Despite his circumstances, the boy carried himself with inherent dignity. He held the door open for Peter, a small gesture of politeness that spoke to careful upbringing despite difficult circumstances. The restaurant was nearly empty except for a few late diners huddled over their meals and staff members preparing for the evening shift change. The warmth hit them immediately, and Peter saw Miguel's shoulders relax slightly as the heated air began to chase away the chill of the rain. The bright fluorescent lighting revealed more details about the boy. The careful way his mother had cut his hair, The fact that his clothes, while worn, were clean and pressed. Peter approached the counter while Miguel found a quiet corner near the windows to make his phone call. "I'd like 2 Big Mac meals, please, large fries, and whatever your warmest drinks are tonight," Peter told the young cashier, a girl who couldn't have been much older than Miguel. "Will that be for here or to go?" she asked with practiced politeness. "For here, please. And could you make sure the drinks are extra hot? We just came in from the rain." As he waited for the order, Peter watched Miguel speaking quietly into the old flip phone. The boy's Spanish was rapid and musical, full of the lilting cadences that spoke of Central American origin. Even without understanding the words, Peter could hear the love and respect in the boy's voice as he spoke to his mother. The conversation seemed to involve some back and forth, with Miguel clearly explaining the situation and seeking permission for this unexpected dinner invitation. Peter found himself remembering his own childhood, when his mother would work late shifts at the diner, and his father wouldn't return from the factory until well after dark. There had been nights when young Peter had wandered the neighborhood, not quite sure what to do with himself, grateful when neighbors invited him in for dinner or homework help. He remembered the mixture of pride and embarrassment he had felt. Proud that adults considered him mature enough to be on his own, embarrassed that his parents' work schedules left him in such situations. Miguel returned to where Peter was waiting, slipping the phone back into his pocket with careful precision. "She said okay, but only if I promise to be polite and respectful and not ask for anything else beyond what you've already offered. You've already been more polite and respectful than most adults I encounter," Peter said with genuine warmth. "Your mother has clearly raised you well." They selected a booth near the large windows that offered a view of the rain-soaked parking lot. Miguel slid across the vinyl seat with unconscious grace, and Peter noticed how he immediately placed his napkin in his lap and arranged his utensils properly. These small gestures spoke to a mother who had insisted on proper manners, regardless of their circumstances. When their food arrived, Miguel's eyes widened slightly at the size of the meal, but he maintained his composure. He ate with careful, deliberate bites, savoring each taste in a way that reminded Peter painfully of his own childhood, when food was never guaranteed, and every meal was appreciated rather than taken for granted. The boy chewed slowly, as if trying to make the experience last as long as possible. "Do you go to school, Miguel?" Peter asked, wanting to understand more about this remarkable young person's life. The boy nodded, swallowing carefully before speaking. "Yes, sir. I'm in 7th grade at Lincoln Middle School. It's about a 20-minute walk from where we live." "What's your favorite subject?" Miguel's eyes lit up for the first time since Peter had met him, transforming his entire face. "Music. We have a music teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, and she lets me stay after school sometimes to practice on the old piano they have in the music room. She says I have potential." Peter felt something stir in his chest. A recognition, a sense of destiny beginning to unfold. "You play piano?" "A little," Miguel said modestly. Then his enthusiasm overcame his natural restraint. "Mrs. Rodriguez has been teaching me basic theory and technique. She says I have good ears for harmony and melody. She's been very patient with me, even though we can't afford real lessons or a piano at home, so I only get to practice at school." "What kind of music do you like to play?" Miguel's face brightened considerably, and Peter saw a glimpse of the passionate artist that lived beneath the boy's careful reserve. "Everything, really. Classical music has such beautiful structure. Mrs. Rodriguez showed me some Bach and Mozart pieces that are like mathematical puzzles, but they make you feel things at the same time. Jazz is incredible too. She played me some Bill Evans recordings, and the way he makes the piano sound like it's singing just amazed me." The boy paused to take a sip of his hot chocolate, clearly organizing his thoughts. "But I also love some of the songs my mom listens to from when she was young. She has this old radio, and sometimes in the evenings when she's tired from work, she'll put on music from the 70s and 80s. Mrs. Rodriguez showed me some Chicago songs too. She said they're classics, that they represent some of the best American popular music ever written." Peter nearly choked on his drink. The casual mention of his former band hit him like a physical blow. Not of pain, but of overwhelming coincidence and emotion. "Chicago? The band?" "Yes, sir. There's this one song, Hard to Say I'm Sorry. That's really beautiful. Mrs. Rodriguez broke it down for me on the piano. The chord progressions aren't too complicated, but the emotion in the melody is just incredible. It's like the person who wrote it really understood what it feels like to make mistakes and desperately want to fix them, but not knowing how. Peter stared at the boy for a long moment, his mind reeling. Here was a child, reduced to searching through garbage to survive, speaking about one of his own compositions with the kind of emotional understanding that most trained music critics never achieved. Miguel was analyzing the very song that Peter had written during one of the most difficult periods of his own life, when his marriage was falling apart and he was struggling to find the words to express his regret and desire for reconciliation. "What else do you know about the band Chicago?" Peter asked carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. Miguel shrugged, taking another bite of his burger before answering. "Not too much about the band members personally. Mrs. Rodriguez told me they were really successful in the 70s and 80s, that they had this incredible horn section that made their sound unique. She said the lead singer had an amazing voice and that he wrote songs that really connected with people's emotions." The boy paused, looking out at the rain. "She played me some of their ballads. If You Leave Me Now, You're the Inspiration, Glory of Love. They all made me feel, I don't know, like someone understood what it was like to struggle but still believe in good things. Like whoever wrote them had been through difficult times but hadn't let those experiences make him bitter." Peter felt his eyes beginning to water. He took a moment to compose himself, pretending to wipe rain from his jacket, while actually dealing with the overwhelming emotion of hearing his life's work described so perceptively by this remarkable child. "Miguel, what do you want to be when you grow up?" The boy was quiet for a long time, staring out at the rain-slicked parking lot where the neon lights created abstract art on the wet pavement. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful and mature beyond his years. "I want to write songs that help people feel less alone. My mom works so hard and she's always tired, but sometimes when she's cooking dinner and humming along to her old radio, she looks peaceful for a few minutes. I want to write music that gives people that feeling. Like no matter what they're going through, someone else has been there too and made it through." Peter felt his breath catch. This was exactly why he had begun writing music decades ago. Not for fame or money, but to create connections between human experiences, to help people understand that they weren't alone in their struggles. "That's a beautiful and important dream, Miguel. It's probably just a dream, though," Miguel said quietly, his voice taking on a resigned tone that broke Peter's heart. "People like us don't usually become musicians. We're just trying to get by day to day. Dreams are luxuries for people who don't have to worry about rent and groceries." Peter leaned forward, his voice taking on an intensity that made Miguel look up from his food. "Miguel, can I tell you something important?" The boy nodded, sensing the significance in Peter's tone. Some of the most beautiful and meaningful music in the world comes from people who understand struggle intimately. The person who wrote, "Hard to Say I'm Sorry," he grew up in a working-class family right here in Chicago. His father worked multiple jobs at a machine shop, often pulling double shifts to make ends meet. His mother worked as a waitress at a local diner, coming home with sore feet and a tired smile, but always finding energy to help with homework. Miguel looked intrigued, leaning forward slightly. There were times when money was extremely tight, when they had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries, when dreams seemed like impossibilities rather than possibilities. But that experience, that deep understanding of what it means to work hard and still struggle, that's what made his music connect with millions of people around the world. Peter paused, watching Miguel's face as he absorbed this information. "And you know what else? The best musicians, the ones who create music that really matters and stands the test of time, they never forget where they came from. They use their success to help others, to create opportunities for young people who have talent but lack resources. They remember what it felt like to dream big while surrounded by limitations." They continued their conversation as they finished their meal, with Miguel sharing stories about school, his mother's work schedule, and the small apartment where they lived. Peter listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that showed he valued Miguel's experiences and perspectives. The boy talked about helping his mother with laundry when she worked late, about studying by the light of their small lamp when the overhead fixture burned out, and they couldn't immediately afford to replace it, about the teacher who sometimes slipped him extra school supplies when she noticed his running low. As they prepared to leave, Peter asked, "Miguel, would you mind if I walked with you partway home? I want to make sure you get there safely in this rain, and I'd like to meet your mother if she's available." Miguel hesitated, and Peter could see the internal struggle. "We don't live in a very nice area, sir. The building is old and the neighborhood. It's not dangerous exactly, but it's not the kind of place where people like you usually visit." "Miguel, I don't care about the neighborhood or the building. I care about making sure you get home safely, and I'd like to thank your mother for raising such an exceptional young man." They stepped back into the rain, which had intensified during their meal. Peter offered to share his umbrella, and they walked together through the rain-soaked streets, their conversation flowing naturally despite the age and circumstance differences between them. Miguel proved to be an excellent conversationalist, pointing out landmarks in his neighborhood with the pride of someone who had learned to find beauty and meaning even in difficult surroundings. He showed Peter the corner store, where his mother sometimes bought milk when they had a few extra dollars, describing the elderly owner who occasionally let them pay a day late if money was tight. He pointed out the bus stop where his mother waited every morning at 5:30 to catch the early bus to her first job, explaining how she had calculated the most efficient route to minimize travel time between her two positions. As they walked, Miguel shared more details about their life. He explained how his mother had taught herself English by watching television and reading discarded newspapers, how she had insisted that he focus on his education above all else, how she had convinced the school to let her work a few hours in the cafeteria in exchange for reduced lunch fees for Miguel. "She tells me that education is the one thing no one can take away from you," Miguel said as they navigated around a large puddle. "She says that even if we lose everything else, if I learn and grow and develop my mind, I'll always have opportunities to create a better life." As they approached Miguel's building, Peter could see what the boy had meant about the neighborhood. The area showed signs of economic struggle, buildings that needed maintenance, streetlights that flickered unreliably, windows that were boarded up rather than repaired. But Peter also noticed signs of community and caring. Small gardens maintained in tiny front yards, children's chalk drawings on sidewalks, curtains in windows that spoke to people making homes despite difficult circumstances. Miguel's building was a 3-story brick structure that had clearly seen better days, but it was maintained as well as limited resources allowed. The front steps were swept clean, and someone had planted small flowers in containers near the entrance. As they approached the building, a woman emerged from the entrance. She was small and sturdy, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and lines of fatigue etched around kind eyes that immediately focused on her son with relief and concern. She wore the uniform of a professional cleaning service and carried a large bag that clearly contained her work supplies. Despite her obvious exhaustion, she moved with purpose and dignity. "Miguel," she called out in accented English, hurrying toward them with the quick steps of a mother who had been worried about her child. "Mama, this is Peter, the man I told you about on the phone," Miguel said, switching to English for Peter's benefit and moving quickly to his mother's side. The woman approached cautiously, her eyes moving between Peter and her son with the protective instinct of a mother who had learned to be wary of strangers, especially those who showed interest in her child. Her expression was polite but guarded, and Peter could see intelligence and strength in her weathered features. "Thank you for buying my son dinner," she said formally, her English clear despite her accent. "I am Maria Santos. Miguel told me you were very kind to him." "The pleasure was entirely mine, Mrs. Santos. Miguel is truly an exceptional young man, intelligent, polite, and remarkably mature. You should be very proud of him." Maria's expression softened slightly at the praise for her son, but her natural caution remained. "He is a good boy, very responsible, very respectful. I have tried to teach him proper values despite our circumstances." Peter could hear the mixture of pride and defensiveness in her voice, and he chose his next words carefully. "Mrs. Santos, if I may say so, whatever you're doing as a mother is working beautifully. Miguel's character and manners are exceptional, and his intelligence and artistic sensitivity are truly remarkable. You mentioned on the phone that you work 2 jobs, Peter continued gently. Maria nodded, suddenly looking embarrassed about their situation. I clean offices from 10 at night until 6 in the morning, and I work at Super Sud's laundromat from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. It's temporary, just until we can save enough money for a better apartment in a safer neighborhood, maybe with a school district that has more resources for Miguel. Peter felt his chest tighten as he processed the reality of Maria's schedule. She was working nearly 20 hours a day, with only a few hours for sleep and virtually no time for rest or recreation. The toll this schedule must take on her health and well-being was staggering. Yet she spoke of it as a temporary sacrifice for her son's future. How long have you been maintaining this schedule? He asked softly. 2 years now since we moved here from El Salvador, Maria answered, glancing at Miguel as if considering how much to share. Miguel's father, she paused, clearly struggling with painful memories. His father died in violence back home. It became too dangerous for us to stay, so we came here seeking safety and opportunity. Peter felt something shift deep inside him. Here was a woman who had fled violence and tragedy, who had brought her son to a foreign country with nothing but hope and determination, who was now sacrificing her health and well-being to create opportunities for her child. And here was a boy who responded to that sacrifice not with resentment or bitterness, but with dignity, respect, and dreams of creating beauty in the world. Mrs. Santos, Miguel mentioned that he's quite talented musically. Would it be possible for me to visit him at school sometime? I'd love to hear him play and perhaps meet his music teacher. Maria's protective instincts flared again, and Peter could see suspicion creeping back into her expression. Why would you want to do that? What is your interest in my son? It was a fair question, and Peter respected her for asking it directly. Any good mother would be wary of adult strangers who showed particular interest in her child, especially when that child was as vulnerable as Miguel clearly was. Because I'm a musician myself, Peter answered honestly, and I recognize something special when I encounter it. Your son has genuine talent, but more importantly, he has the kind of emotional understanding and artistic sensitivity that can't be taught. With proper encouragement and opportunities, I believe he could do remarkable things with his musical abilities. What kind of musician? Maria asked, her tone suggesting she was trying to determine whether Peter was legitimate or simply another person trying to take advantage of their situation. Miguel suddenly grabbed his mother's arm, his face lighting up with a sudden realization. Mama, remember that song you love so much? Hard to Say I'm Sorry? The one you play when you're missing home? I was telling Peter about it earlier, about how beautiful the melody is and how much emotion is in the lyrics. Something flickered in Maria's eyes, a spark of recognition or memory. She looked at Peter more carefully, studying his face in the light from the street lamp. Her expression changed gradually, moving from suspicion to confusion to dawning amazement. You look familiar, she said slowly, her voice taking on a different quality. There's something about your face. Peter felt his heart racing. The moment of truth had arrived, though he hadn't planned it this way. Mrs. Santos, my full name is Peter Cetera. The change in her expression was immediate and dramatic. Her eyes widened in shock. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she took an involuntary step backward as if she had been physically struck. The Peter Cetera? From the band Chicago? Peter nodded, watching as the full implications of this revelation washed over both mother and son. Maria began speaking rapid Spanish to Miguel, her voice filled with excitement and disbelief. Miguel looked confused until she switched back to English, her words tumbling over each other in her excitement. Miguel, this is Peter Cetera. He sang all those songs I play when I'm feeling homesick or lonely. Hard to Say I'm Sorry. You're the inspiration, glory of love, If You Leave Me Now, all of them. He's the voice that has gotten me through some of my darkest nights. Miguel's jaw dropped as he looked between his mother and Peter, his young mind struggling to process this incredible coincidence. You're the singer, the one who actually wrote, Hard to Say I'm Sorry. I am, Peter confirmed. And I meant every word I said about your talent, Miguel. I've been making music for over 50 years, and I can recognize something special when I encounter it. What you have isn't just technical ability. It's emotional intelligence and artistic sensitivity. The three of them stood in the rain, none of them speaking for several moments as the weight of this revelation settled over them. Finally, Maria broke the silence, her voice thick with emotion. I can't believe this is real. All those nights when I was so exhausted I could barely stand, when I was wondering if I had made the right choice bringing Miguel to this country, I would put on your music and it would give me strength to keep going. Your songs, they made me feel like someone understood what it was like to struggle and still believe that better days were possible. Peter felt tears mixing with the rain on his face. Mrs. Santos, would you mind if we went inside out of this rain? I'd like to talk to both of you about something important, something that could change your lives if you're willing to consider it. They climbed the narrow stairs to the Santos family's small apartment on the second floor. The building's hallway was clean but showed its age. Worn carpet, flickering fluorescent lights, the faint smell of cooking spices from various apartments mixing in the air. Maria unlocked 3 separate locks on their door, a reminder of the neighborhood's challenges. The apartment itself was a revelation. Despite being small and sparsely furnished, it was immaculately clean and filled with touches that spoke to Maria's determination to create a warm home for her son. A few family photographs sat on a small table, showing Miguel at various ages, and including some pictures of a man who must have been his father. A battery-powered radio sat prominently on the kitchen counter, clearly their main source of entertainment and connection to the world. "Please sit," Maria said, gesturing to the worn but comfortable couch. "I'm sorry we don't have much to offer you. We weren't expecting such an important guest. You've already offered me more than you know," Peter said sincerely, settling onto the couch and looking around at the small space that somehow managed to feel like a real home despite its limitations. Miguel sat next to his mother, still looking overwhelmed by the evening's revelations. Peter took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to propose would change all of their lives forever. "Mrs. Santos, Miguel, I want to make you an offer. But first, I need you to understand something about me and about why I'm here tonight. Yes, I've been fortunate in my career. I've had success that has allowed me to live comfortably and pursue my artistic passions. But the most important thing in my life has always been the belief that music can change people's lives, and that those of us who have been blessed with opportunities have a responsibility to create opportunities for others." He paused, looking directly at Miguel. "Young man, in the few hours I've known you, you've shown me more character, dignity, and genuine understanding of what music means than most people I've encountered in decades in the music industry. You have natural talent, but more importantly, you have the heart and soul to use that talent in a way that matters." "What are you saying?" Maria asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saying that I would like to help Miguel develop his musical abilities properly. I'd like to arrange for him to have regular piano lessons with one of the best teachers in Chicago. I'd like to make sure he has access to quality instruments so he can practice at home. I'd like to help him explore different musical styles and find his own artistic voice." Peter turned to Maria. "And Mrs. Santos, I'd like to help you find employment that doesn't require you to work nearly 20 hours a day. I have connections in the music industry here in Chicago. Venues, recording studios, management companies, and many of them need people with your work ethic and reliability for positions that pay better than what you're earning now and offer more reasonable hours." Maria shook her head immediately. "We can't accept charity. We work for what we have. We don't take handouts." "This isn't charity," Peter said firmly. "This is investment. I'm investing in Miguel's talent and in his future contributions to the world. In exchange, I ask only that someday, when he's achieved his dreams and found success, he remembers this moment and helps someone else the way I'm helping him now." Miguel spoke up quietly, his voice uncertain. "But what if I'm not good enough? What if I work hard but don't have enough talent to justify your investment? What if I disappoint you?" Peter leaned forward, his voice taking on the intensity of deep conviction. "Miguel, do you remember what you told me earlier about what you wanted to do with music? Write songs that help people feel less alone. That's not about technical perfection or commercial success. That's about having something real and meaningful to say, and the courage to say it authentically. You already have both of those things. The technical skills can be taught. The heart and soul you already possess, that can't be taught. That's a gift you were born with. The room fell silent except for the sound of rain against the windows and the distant hum of the building's heating system. Finally, Maria spoke, her voice thick with emotion. Why us? Why Miguel? You must meet many talented young people in your career. Why would you choose to help a boy you found searching through garbage behind a restaurant? Peter considered his answer carefully, wanting to be completely honest with them. Because tonight, when I saw your son searching through that dumpster, he wasn't just looking for food. He was being careful not to make a mess. He was respectful of the restaurant's property, even while he was desperate. When I offered to help him, his first thought wasn't to take advantage of the situation. It was to call his mother for permission. He looked at both of them. When we talked about music, his eyes lit up not with thoughts of fame or money, but with genuine love for the art form and a desire to use it to help others. When he told me about Hard to Say I'm Sorry, he understood something about that song that I hoped someone would understand when I wrote it 35 years ago. He got that it's about redemption, about the possibility of making things right even when you've made mistakes. Peter's voice became more emotional. That kind of emotional intelligence and artistic sensitivity can't be taught or faked. It's either there or it isn't. Miguel has it in abundance. Maria wiped tears from her eyes with the back of her hand. This feels like a dream. Good things like this don't happen to people like us. It's not a dream, Peter assured her. It's an opportunity, but it will still require hard work and dedication from both of you. Miguel will need to practice diligently, take his studies seriously, and be willing to challenge himself artistically. You'll need to trust the process and allow your son to explore possibilities that might seem impossible right now. Over the next hour, they discussed practical arrangements in detail. Peter explained that he wanted to start slowly and build gradually. Miguel would begin with piano lessons twice a week with Margaret Chen, a respected teacher who had worked with many successful musicians over her 40-year career. Peter would provide a digital piano for their apartment, so Miguel could practice at home and develop his skills properly. For Maria, Peter had researched several opportunities that might be suitable. The Chicago Theater had an opening for an events coordinator, someone who would help organize concerts, manage logistics, and assist with hospitality for visiting artists. The position paid significantly better than her current jobs combined and would allow her to work regular daytime hours, meaning she could be home with Miguel in the evenings. There's one more thing, Peter said as he prepared to leave. Miguel, I'd like you to start keeping a journal of musical ideas, lyrics, melodies, chord progressions, anything that occurs to you. Sometimes the best songs come from the most honest emotions and everyday experiences. As Peter reached the door, Miguel called out to him, Mr. Cetera. Peter, please, just Peter. Miguel took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for an important question. Peter, in Hard to Say I'm Sorry, why does the song say it's hard to say you're sorry? In my experience, saying sorry is actually the easy part. It's meaning it and proving it through your actions that's really hard. Peter stopped and turned back, amazed once again by the boy's profound insight. Here was a 13-year-old child who had just identified something that had taken Peter decades to fully understand about his own composition. You're absolutely right, Miguel. Maybe the song should have been called Hard to Show I'm Sorry, or Hard to Live I'm Sorry. You've just taught me something new about my own music. 3 weeks later, Peter sat in the back of Lincoln Middle School's music room, listening to Miguel work through a simple Bach invention on the school's old upright piano. The instrument was clearly past its prime. Several keys stuck slightly, and the tuning was questionable. But Miguel coaxed beautiful sounds from it nonetheless. His technique was still developing, but his musical intuition was extraordinary. He played with the kind of emotional connection that usually took years of study to develop. Mrs. Rodriguez, Miguel's music teacher, approached Peter during a break in the lesson. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and hands that showed decades of piano playing. I don't know what you've done for that boy, but the transformation has been remarkable, she said quietly. Miguel was always talented, but now he practices with such focus and dedication. His confidence has grown tremendously, but more importantly, he's beginning to find his own musical voice. Peter watched Miguel carefully work through a difficult passage, repeating it slowly until he could play it smoothly. He's doing all the real work. I'm just making sure he has the tools and opportunities he needs to develop his gifts. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded. His composition attempts have been particularly impressive. He's been writing simple melodies and experimenting with harmonies that show real sophistication. There's one piece he's working on that he calls Angels in Old Coats. It's quite beautiful. After the lesson, Peter walked Miguel to the school entrance where Maria was waiting. She had started her new job at the Chicago Theater the previous week, and the change in her appearance was striking. She looked rested for the first time since Peter had met her. Her new position was challenging and required her to learn new skills, but it utilized her natural organizational abilities and allowed her to work normal daytime hours. "How was the lesson today?" Maria asked her son as they walked to Peter's car. "Incredible. Mrs. Rodriguez taught me about voice leading in Bach chorales, and I think I finally understand how he creates such beautiful harmonic progressions. It's like mathematical poetry." As they drove through the familiar Chicago streets, Miguel pulled out his composition notebook, a leather-bound journal that Peter had given him to record his musical ideas. "I finished something yesterday," Miguel said, his voice carrying a mixture of pride and nervousness. "It's not really a complete song yet, just some words and a basic melody, but I'd like to share it with you if that's okay." "I'd be honored to hear it," Peter replied, pulling over at a small park where they could sit and listen properly. Miguel opened his notebook and began to read, his young voice clear and confident. "Sometimes angels don't have wings. They have old coats and gentle eyes. They find you when you're searching through the things the world denies. They don't promise golden kingdoms, just a chance to try again. And they teach you that tomorrow can be different than today has been. When the rain falls down on dreams that seem too big to ever hold, angels in their weathered jackets turn your silver into gold. Not the kind that buys you mansions, but the kind that fills your heart when someone sees your hidden treasures and believes in who you are." Peter felt his throat tighten with emotion. In those simple but profound lines, Miguel had captured something essential about hope, about human kindness, about the transformative power of believing in someone else's potential. "Miguel, those words are beautiful. They capture something very true about how people can change each other's lives through simple acts of kindness and recognition. I was thinking about that night we met," Miguel explained, "about how one person choosing to be kind can change everything, but also about how my mom has been my angel in an old coat my whole life, working so hard to give me opportunities she never had." Maria reached over and squeezed her son's hand, tears glistening in her eyes. Over the following months, Peter watched Miguel's progress with growing amazement and pride. The boy's technical skills developed rapidly under Margaret Chen's expert instruction. But more importantly, his original compositions began to emerge with increasing sophistication and emotional depth. Working with both Peter and Mrs. Chen, Miguel started creating melodies that perfectly complemented his thoughtful lyrics. He had a natural gift for finding the musical phrases that enhanced the emotional content of his words, creating songs that felt both contemporary and timeless. Maria flourished in her new role as well. Her natural warmth and organizational skills made her excellent at coordinating events and managing the complex logistics required for successful concerts. She quickly became indispensable to the theater management, earning the respect of her colleagues and the visiting artists she worked with. One evening in late spring, as Peter was leaving the Santos apartment after listening to Miguel play some new compositions, Maria stopped him at the door. "Peter, I need to tell you something important," she said, her voice serious. He paused, sensing the weight of whatever she was about to share. "Before we came to America, Miguel's father, Carlos, was killed in gang violence in El Salvador. Miguel witnessed it happen. For months afterward, he wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat properly, wouldn't go to school. The trauma was so severe that I wondered if he would ever recover." Peter felt his heart breaking for what this family had endured. "The only thing that seemed to reach him during those dark months was music," Maria continued. I would play songs on our old radio, and slowly, gradually, he began to respond. Music became his lifeline, the thing that pulled him back to the world of the living. She paused, composing herself before continuing. We came to this country with nothing but hope and determination. I was terrified we wouldn't make it. There were nights when I lay awake wondering if I had made the right choice, bringing him to a place where I didn't know the language well, or understand the customs, where we had no family or support system. Maria wiped tears from her eyes, but Miguel never complained, never expressed anger about our situation. Even when we had so little, when we were sleeping on a mattress on the floor and eating rice and beans for weeks at a time, he would tell me that he believed things would get better. He would say, "Mama, we just have to keep working and believing. Good things happen to people who don't give up." Peter closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of courage and resilience this family had shown. The night you found him behind that McDonald's, I had been at work for 16 hours straight, Maria said quietly. I had left him money for dinner, but he had spent it on medicine for me instead. I had been running a high fever for 2 days and he was worried about me. So he went looking for food the only way he knew how. Peter's chest tightened as he understood the full context of that first encounter. That's why what you've done for us means so much more than you might realize, Maria continued. You didn't just give Miguel music lessons and me a better job. You gave us back our faith in human goodness. You reminded us that there are people in the world who care about more than just themselves, who see potential where others might see problems. Maria, Peter said softly, your son taught me something equally important that night. He showed me that real character isn't about what you have, or where you come from, or what advantages you've been given. It's about how you treat others when you have every reason to be bitter or selfish, about maintaining dignity and kindness even in desperate circumstances. 6 months after their first meeting, Peter arranged for Miguel to give his first public performance at a small venue called the Blue Note, where Maria now worked as assistant manager. It was an intimate setting, about 60 people, mostly employees of the venue, and some of Peter's friends from the music industry who had heard about this remarkable young talent. The weeks leading up to the performance were filled with nervous preparation. Miguel had prepared 3 pieces, Bach's Invention No, one in C major, to demonstrate his classical training, a piano arrangement of Chicago's You're the Inspiration as a tribute to Peter, and his original composition, Angels in Old Coats, which he had developed into a complete song with multiple verses and a haunting melody. On the night of the performance, Miguel stood backstage in his carefully pressed shirt and tie, clothing that Peter had helped Maria purchase for the occasion. His hands were trembling slightly, and Peter could see the nervous energy radiating from the boy. I'm scared, Miguel admitted quietly. What if I forget the words? What if my fingers freeze up? What if people don't understand what I'm trying to say? Peter knelt down to Miguel's eye level, just as he had that first night behind the McDonald's. Miguel, do you remember what you told me you wanted to do with music? Help people feel less alone. That's not about technical perfection, Peter reminded him. That's about sharing something real and honest from your heart. You've already done that just by being who you are. Tonight, you're simply sharing that gift with a few more people. As Miguel took his place at the piano, Peter noticed that all nervousness seemed to disappear the moment his fingers touched the keys. The music flowed from him with natural grace and deep emotion, each piece building on the last to tell a story of struggle, hope, and transformation. His performance of the Bach Invention was technically proficient and musically sensitive. His arrangement of You're the Inspiration brought tears to Peter's eyes. The boy had added subtle harmonies and melodic embellishments that enhanced rather than overshadowed the original composition. But it was Angels in Old Coats that truly moved the audience. Miguel's original song was performed with such genuine emotion and musical sophistication that several people in the audience were openly weeping by the time he finished. The melody was haunting and memorable, the lyrics were profound without being pretentious, and the overall effect was of a mature artist sharing something deeply personal and universally relevant. When the performance ended, the audience rose in spontaneous applause that continued for several minutes. Miguel stood beside the piano, looking somewhat overwhelmed by the response, then immediately sought his mother's face in the audience. When he saw Maria beaming with pride, tears streaming down her face, he smiled with pure joy. After the concert, several of Peter's industry friends approached him with questions about Miguel. Word began to spread through Chicago's music community about this remarkable young talent, and opportunities started presenting themselves. A year later, Miguel was accepted into the prestigious Chicago Academy of Music on a full scholarship. The admissions committee was impressed not only by his technical skill and original compositions, but by his mature understanding of music's emotional and social power. His essay about wanting to use music to help people feel less alone had particularly resonated with the faculty. On the day before Miguel left for the academy, Peter visited the Santos family in their new apartment, a bright, spacious two-bedroom place in a much better neighborhood. Close to Miguel's new school, Maria had been promoted to events manager at the Blue Note and was earning enough to provide comfortable living conditions for her family. "I have something for you," Peter told Miguel, handing him a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a professional quality digital piano, far superior to the basic instrument Peter had initially provided, along with recording equipment that would allow Miguel to capture and develop his musical ideas properly. "But more importantly," Peter continued, "I want to give you this." He handed Miguel an envelope containing information about a scholarship fund they were establishing together. "We're creating the Angels in Old Coats Foundation," Peter explained. "Every year, we'll provide music lessons, instruments, and educational opportunities to children who show talent but lack resources. Your job will be to help identify potential recipients and, as you develop as an artist, to mentor some of them yourself." Miguel stared at the documents, then looked up at Peter with confusion and concern. "But I haven't accomplished anything yet to deserve this kind of responsibility. I'm just a kid who's getting started." "You've already done the most important thing," Peter replied. "You've shown that talent and character can coexist, that success and kindness can work together. Now you get to spend your life proving that artistic achievement and social responsibility are not only compatible, but necessary for truly meaningful success." 3 years later, Peter sat in the front row of Symphony Hall, watching 16-year-old Miguel Santos perform his first piano concerto with the Chicago Youth Orchestra. The piece, which Miguel had composed himself, was titled Redemption Songs and was dedicated to all the angels who wear ordinary clothes and see extraordinary possibilities in ordinary people. The composition was sophisticated and emotionally complex, incorporating elements of classical structure with contemporary harmonies and rhythms that spoke to Miguel's diverse musical influences. Critics would later describe it as remarkably mature work from a composer who understands both technical excellence and emotional authenticity. As the final notes faded and the audience erupted in enthusiastic applause, Peter reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with a chance encounter behind a fast food restaurant, a moment when two lives intersected in a way that changed both of them forever. Miguel had not only developed into an exceptional young musician, but had maintained the character and values that had drawn Peter to him in the first place. He worked regularly with the Angels in Old Coats Foundation, identifying and mentoring other talented young people from difficult circumstances. He performed benefit concerts to raise money for music education programs in underserved communities. He had become exactly what Peter had hoped, an artist who understood that talent comes with responsibility. After the concert, at the reception, Miguel found Peter in the crowd of well-wishers and supporters. "There's something I want you to hear," Miguel said, leading Peter to a quiet corner of the reception hall. He pulled out his phone and played a recording of a young girl singing. Her voice was clear and sweet, and she was performing one of Miguel's original compositions with remarkable emotional maturity. "Her name is Isabella. She's 9 years old and she's one of our scholarship recipients," Miguel explained. "She lives with her grandmother in the same neighborhood where my mother and I used to live. Last week, she told me that she wants to write songs that help people remember that they're loved, even when they feel forgotten." Peter smiled, recognizing the echo of Miguel's own words from that first night they had met. "The circle continues," he said. "It does," Miguel agreed. "And Peter, I want you to know that not a single day passes that I don't think about how different my life would be if you had simply walked past that dumpster. But more than that, I think about how you taught me that success isn't just about achieving your own dreams. It's about helping others achieve theirs too." Miguel paused, his voice becoming emotional. "You showed me that real strength comes from lifting others up. That the most important performances happen not on stage but in the quiet moments when we choose to see potential instead of problems. When we decide to be the answer to someone else's prayer." As the evening wound down, Peter walked through the streets of Chicago, the same streets where he had grown up, where he had struggled as a young musician, where he had eventually found success and recognition. He thought about the unexpected ways that lives intersect and change each other, about the power of simple kindness to create ripple effects that extend far beyond what we can imagine. His phone buzzed with a text message from Maria, who had been working at the reception but had stepped away to handle some logistics. "Watching Miguel perform tonight, I remembered something he told me after that first night you met him. He said, 'Mama, I think real angels are just regular people who choose to care when they don't have to. Thank you for choosing to be our angel in an old coat.'" Peter stopped walking and looked up at the Chicago skyline, the lights of the city twinkling like earthbound stars. He thought about all the times he had walked these streets as a young man, dreaming of musical success, but not yet understanding that the greatest success would come not from his achievements, but from his ability to recognize and nurture the achievements of others. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick note to himself. "Look for more angels in old coats. They're everywhere, waiting to be discovered, ready to change the world if someone just believes in them." As he walked back to his car, Peter hummed a melody that had been forming in his mind throughout the evening. It would become his next song, inspired by Miguel's journey, and dedicated to all the young dreamers who maintain their hope, even when circumstances seem hopeless. The song would be called "Angels in Old Coats," co-written with Miguel Santos, and it would become one of Peter's most beloved compositions, a testament to the power of human kindness and the endless potential that exists in every person if someone just takes the time to see it. 2 years later, 18-year-old Miguel Santos graduated as valedictorian from the Chicago Academy of Music and was accepted to Juilliard on a full scholarship. His graduation speech focused on the theme of angels in old coats, the ordinary people who see extraordinary potential and choose to act on that vision. Success, he told the audience of families and faculty, is not measured by what we achieve for ourselves, but by how many others we help achieve their dreams along the way. Every person in this room tonight is here because someone believed in them, supported them, saw their potential when they couldn't see it themselves. Peter, sitting in the audience with tears of pride in his eyes, knew that his investment in this remarkable young man had paid dividends beyond anything he could have imagined. Miguel had become not just a talented musician, but a force for positive change in the world, someone who would spend his life creating opportunities for others, just as Peter had created opportunities for him. 5 years later, 23-year-old Miguel Santos was performing at Carnegie Hall, this time as a solo artist promoting his debut album, Redemption Songs. The album, a collection of original compositions about hope, resilience, and human connection, had received critical acclaim and commercial success. More importantly, all proceeds from the album were donated to the Angels in Old Coats Foundation, which had now provided music education to over 500 children. Peter, now 81, sat in his usual front row seat, marveling at the journey they had all taken together. Miguel's performance that night was transcendent, technically masterful, emotionally profound, and spiritually uplifting. The audience, completely captivated, gave him multiple standing ovations. But the moment that moved Peter most came during Miguel's final song of the evening. As he began to play Angels in Old Coats, he spoke directly to the audience. This song was inspired by a night 9 years ago when I was searching for food behind a McDonald's in Chicago. A man in an old coat saw me there and chose kindness over indifference. He could have walked past, could have looked away, could have minded his own business. Instead, he stopped and asked if I was hungry. That simple act of compassion changed not just my life, but the lives of hundreds of other young people who have benefited from the foundation we created together. Miguel looked directly at Peter as he continued. Peter Cetera taught me that we all have the power to be angels in old coats. Ordinary people who see extraordinary potential and choose to act on it. Tonight, I challenge each of you to look for opportunities to be that person for someone else. You never know. The person you help today might be standing on this very stage 10 years from now, thanking you for believing in their dreams. As Miguel played the final notes of the song, Peter felt a profound sense of completion and continuity. The circle that had begun with a chance encounter behind a restaurant had grown into something beautiful and far-reaching, touching lives in ways that none of them could have predicted. After the concert, during the reception, Miguel introduced Peter to Isabella Rodriguez, the young girl whose recording he had shared years earlier. Now 14, she was one of the foundation's most promising scholarship recipients and was preparing for her own debut performance. "Mr. Cetera," she said with the poise of someone far beyond her years, "I wanted to thank you for creating the foundation that gave me my chance. Like Miguel, I come from a family that struggled financially, and without your support, I never would have been able to develop my musical abilities." She paused, then smiled, with the same mixture of gratitude and determination that Peter remembered seeing in young Miguel's eyes. "I promise that when I'm successful, I'll continue the work you and Miguel started. The circle of kindness will keep growing." As the evening ended and Peter prepared to leave, Miguel walked him to his car. "Peter, there's something I need to tell you," Miguel said, his voice carrying the weight of important news. "Next month, I'm moving to Los Angeles. I've been offered a position as artist-in-residence at the Los Angeles Children's Hospital, where I'll work with young patients, using music therapy to help them heal and cope with their illnesses." Peter felt a mixture of pride and sadness. Pride in Miguel's continued commitment to using his talents to help others. Sadness at the thought of his protege moving so far away. "But more than that," Miguel continued, "I'm also starting work on my next album, which will be specifically focused on songs for children facing difficult circumstances. I want to create music that gives them hope and helps them believe in better tomorrows." Miguel handed Peter a small, wrapped package. "I wanted you to have this before I leave Chicago." Inside was a simple silver pendant in the shape of a coat, not ornate or expensive, just a beautiful reminder of their shared journey. "I had this made for you because I want you to remember that you truly were my angel in an old coat," Miguel said. "You saved my life that night, not just by buying me dinner, but by seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself." Peter felt tears coming to his eyes as he held the pendant. "But Peter," Miguel continued, "I also want you to know that you taught me something even more important than music. You taught me that our greatest achievements aren't the things we do for ourselves, but the things we do for others. Every time I perform, every time I mentor a young musician, every time we award another scholarship, I remember that lesson." 6 months later, Peter received a phone call that would mark another significant milestone in their ongoing story. Miguel was calling from Los Angeles with exciting news. "Peter, you're not going to believe this," Miguel said, his voice filled with excitement. "Remember Isabella Rodriguez, the girl you met at Carnegie Hall? She just won the National Young Artist Competition. She's going to perform with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra next month. And she's specifically requested to perform one of the pieces I composed for the Children's Hospital project." Peter felt his heart swell with pride and amazement. The ripple effects of that chance encounter behind a McDonald's continued to expand, touching lives in ways he never could have imagined. "There's more," Miguel continued. "The Children's Hospital has asked me to develop a full music therapy program here, and they want to make it a model that can be replicated at hospitals across the country. We're calling it the Angels in Old Coats Music Healing Initiative." As Peter hung up the phone, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with such a simple moment, seeing a young person in need and choosing to help rather than ignore. That single decision to buy a hungry child dinner had grown into a foundation that had helped hundreds of young people, a music therapy program that would help countless sick children, and most importantly, a living example of how kindness creates more kindness. 1 year later, on the 10th anniversary of their first meeting, Peter stood once again behind the same McDonald's where he had first encountered Miguel. The restaurant had invited them both to participate in a community event highlighting local success stories and the power of mentorship. Miguel, now 24 and an established artist and humanitarian, stood beside Peter as they addressed a crowd of local families, young people, and community leaders. 10 years ago, I was a scared, hungry boy searching through that dumpster over there, Miguel told the audience, pointing to the spot where their lives had intersected. I thought I was just looking for food. I had no idea I was about to find my future. He looked at Peter with deep affection and respect. Peter Cetera taught me that we all have the power to change someone's life through simple acts of kindness and recognition. He saw potential where others might have seen only problems. He chose to invest in that potential, not because he expected anything in return, but because he believed in the power of human goodness. Miguel turned back to the audience. Today, through our foundation, we've provided music education to over 800 young people. Dozens of them are now pursuing professional music careers. Hundreds more have discovered the joy and healing power of music in their lives. And it all started because one person decided to stop and ask if a hungry child needed help. Peter stepped forward to address the crowd. I want to be clear about something, he said. I didn't change Miguel's life. He changed his own life through hard work, dedication, and an unshakable belief in the power of music to heal and connect people. I simply provided some resources and opportunities. Miguel did everything else. He paused, looking at the crowd of young faces in the audience. But here's what I learned from Miguel that night and in all the years since. Every person has extraordinary potential inside them. Our job as human beings is to look for that potential in others and help them develop it. Miguel taught me that success without service is hollow, that achievement without compassion is meaningless. Peter's voice grew stronger as he continued. Look around you right now. In this crowd, there are future doctors, teachers, artists, scientists, leaders, people who will change the world in ways we can't yet imagine. Some of them might be struggling right now, might be facing challenges that seem insurmountable. Your job is to be their angel in an old coat, to see their potential when they can't see it themselves, to offer help when they need it most, to believe in their dreams when the world tells them those dreams are impossible. As the event concluded, a young girl approached Peter and Miguel. She was perhaps 10 years old, with bright eyes and a shy smile. Mr. Santos, she said to Miguel, I play piano too. My teacher says I have talent, but my family can't afford advanced lessons. Do you think, could I maybe audition for your foundation someday? Miguel knelt down to her level, just as Peter had done with him 10 years earlier. What's your name? Miguel asked gently. Sophia. Sophia, that's a beautiful name. It means wisdom. Miguel smiled warmly. Of course you can audition, but more than that, I want you to remember something important. Your talent is a gift, but what you do with that gift is your choice. If you develop your abilities and find success, promise me you'll use that success to help other young people who come after you. The girl nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of what Miguel was saying. As Peter watched this interaction, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction and continuity. The cycle was continuing, the circle of kindness was expanding, and the world was becoming a better place one person at a time. Later that evening, as they sat in Peter's apartment looking through old photos and newspaper clippings documenting Miguel's journey from struggling child to accomplished artist and humanitarian, Miguel made an announcement that surprised even Peter. I've been thinking about something for a while now, Miguel said. I want to move back to Chicago permanently. Los Angeles has been wonderful, and the work at the Children's Hospital has been incredibly fulfilling. But this is home. This is where our story began, and this is where I want to focus my efforts for the future. Peter felt a surge of joy at this news. I've been offered the position of Director of Community Outreach at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, Miguel continued. It would allow me to develop music education programs throughout the city, work with schools in underserved communities, and expand the Angels in Old Coat's foundation even further. Miguel paused, then smiled with the same mixture of determination and hope that Peter remembered from their first conversation. But mostly, I want to be here because this city gave me my start, and I want to spend my life giving back to the community that made my dreams possible. I want to walk these streets looking for the next hungry kid with hidden talents, the next family struggling to make ends meet, but never losing hope. As they sat together, planning the next phase of their shared mission, Peter reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. A chance encounter born of simple human kindness had grown into something beautiful and far-reaching, touching countless lives and creating ripples of positive change that would continue long after both of them were gone. The story that began behind a McDonald's with a hungry boy and a man in an old coat had become a testament to the transformative power of seeing potential in others, of choosing kindness over indifference, of understanding that our greatest achievements come not from what we accomplish for ourselves, but from what we help others accomplish for themselves. Never underestimate the power of a kind heart. Never walk past someone in need without at least considering how you might help. Never doubt that one simple act of compassion can change a life, start a foundation, heal a community, and create a legacy that lasts forever. The person you help today, that hungry child, that struggling student, that discouraged dreamer, might be the one who changes the world tomorrow. And you might be the angel in an old coat they've been praying for. Sometimes the greatest concerts are performed not on stage, but in the everyday moments when we choose to see the dignity in every person, when we recognize that everyone has a song worth hearing, when we remember that we all have the power to be someone else's miracle. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your own experiences of unexpected kindness in the comments below. Your story of compassion and hope might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, we all have the power to be angels in old coats for someone who desperately needs to believe in miracles again.